With the recent influx of alleged disclosed UAP files from the Pentagon and some of the ones that we have seen over the past now almost 10 years, the idea of disclosure is really starting to take off. It is really starting to almost gain momentum, if you want to use that terminology. But is there something up with all of this UAP, UFO footage that we're all of a sudden getting leaked and declassified and shown? Is there a reason behind it? I kind of talked a little bit a few episodes ago about what's going on with all of these declassified files, and are they really declassifying and showing us everything? But before we get into this entire conversation, let's go almost all the way back to the beginning, back to 1952, and just listen to how they were talking to us. What is that? We were 74 years ago now. This is what they were saying.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States. In pursuit of this obligation, since 1947, we have received and analyzed between 1 and 2,000 reports that have come to us from all kinds of sources. Of this great mass of reports, we have been able adequately to explain the great bulk of them, explain them to our own satisfaction. We've been able to explain them as hoaxes, as erroneously identified friendly aircraft, as meteorological or electronic phenomena, or as light aberrations. However, there have been a certain percentage of this volume of reports that have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things. It is this group of observations that we now are attempting to resolve. Our basic difficulty in dealing with these is that there is no measurement of them that makes it possible for us to put them in any pattern that would be profitable for a deliberate, custom sort of analysis to take the next step. We have, as of date, come to only one firm conclusion with respect to this remaining percentage, and that is that it does not contain any pattern of purpose or of consistency that we can relate with to any conceivable threat to the United States.
Now, even way back then, and I'll be honest, most of you probably know, just by looking at me, I wasn't alive in 1952. Matter of fact, I wasn't really around for another 20 years. So that's all history for me, too. But even way back then, just 5 years after Roswell, they were already starting this whole misinformation or disinformation, depending on how you want to word it and to verbalize it. They were already, actually, the day after Roswell, they were starting the disinformation campaign. And it's got nothing but wider and wider and wider since. And now here we are in 2026. And now all of a sudden we're starting to get all of this information declassified After 70 plus years of the government and the military telling us there's no credible evidence to any flying saucers, UFOs, UAPs, whatever they were called at the time. They always told us there was no credible information. But if that was true, then what are all these clips we're being shown now? Are they just stuff you had on a server somewhere, packed away in a film can in the deep, dark recesses of the Pentagon, and you just decided to release them now? That's kind of one thing I would like to see. I love seeing all of these clips that they have been showing us recently that are all within the past, 10 to 20 years. I want to see the stuff that they have stocked away from 40, 50, 60 years ago. Because we know if they have stuff from 10 years ago, you know damn well they have stuff from 50 years ago packed away somewhere too. Or are we not going to get that? But here's the thing with all that. Like you just saw General Sanford there talking in 1952, and everyone knows the whole mythos of the men in black, men that showed up whenever somebody had a UFO sighting and quickly quelled their curiosity about what they saw. So there's always been this case of misinformation or disinformation, trying to sully somebody's name to make them look like a fool. There's been agents all over. And most people probably know the name Richard Doty. And we're going to kind of talk about him throughout this episode and tie it all in together about why all of a sudden now they're starting to release all of this stuff. But if you don't know who Richard Doty is, let me give you a quick little snippet of a film that was made about him. Would help if I actually hit the right one.
At the core, there is something that they want to keep people away from, a real truth.
Back in the early 80s, it was my job to confuse the UFO community. And it was very easy to convince Paul. Paul was a World War II veteran. He's very patriotic. He always flew his flag. Those type of people you can convince that, listen, you can't tell anybody else about this because this, you could get in the wrong hands.
Would we use perception to help shroud what we're trying to protect? Absolutely. If you've got an aerial platform that is highly advanced and the public who happens to get a glimpse of the thing, if they're convinced that it's from Venus and there's no way it could be our military, well, hey, that's awesome. Hell yes.
It's been a cover story in the U.S. for a long time. Tell the media, tell anybody who will listen, that they're using UFOs to cover up advanced technology, when the truth is exactly the opposite of the words.
We're really a byproduct of extraterrestrial intervention.
What if we're their farm animals? What if they eat us psychically? I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities here that are not good.
Doty had this wonderful way to sell it. I'm with the government. You cooperate with us. And I'm going to tell you what the government really knows about UFOs deep down in those vaults. I'm going to tell you all kinds of lies.
Whatever's going on, it's happening at a government level. Everything that I do is being watched. And I have to assume that I'm being bugged.
Let's take one step at a time. You're looking at Richard Doty, the professional disinformer, trained to lie.
Now, I do implore you, if you haven't seen Mirage Men, to seek it out because it's kind of a good look into the officers or the agents that are deep within the military and the government that do disinformation campaigns. And Richard Doty is the main one that we know of, anyways, because now all of a sudden he's retired and he's coming out and he's talking all of this stuff, giving us all this information that us, the people that are interested in ufology, have been reading and studying and learning about for our entire lives or however long we've been interested. And now he's coming out and he's talking about all this information. And he's almost taken some of the craziest sort of conspiracy things, the ones that most of us listen to and think that's interesting, but that's pretty outlandish. And he's coming out and he's telling us now because he's retired and he's coming clean and telling us all this crazy stuff is actually true. But is it? Or is he still being a disinformation officer, even though he claims he's not employed by the military anymore? That's kind of the weird thing because I find it hard to believe somebody that will admit that they were a disinformation officer and spent their entire career lying to people, and now all of a sudden that they're retired, they're coming clean. They're telling us the truth. I suppose it could be true, but you start off the whole conversation stating that you've been a professional liar your entire life, and now all of a sudden we should believe everything that you say. That's kind of where I look at when I hear Richard Doty talk about a lot of the things that he talks about. And we're going to watch a couple videos that he does interviews with, and we'll kind of take them from there.
Craft was made of a type of outer skin that was almost a living organism. And that's part of the extraterrestrial contribution to that craft. That outer skin was able to project itself and curve time.
So just to be clear, we're talking about time travel here.
We're talking about time travel.
What exactly is Project Minot?
Project Minot is a code name for Managed Integrated Navigational Off-Planet Transport. It pertains to a craft that we created with the assistance of an extraterrestrial race to travel not within our solar system, but outside our solar system.
See, this is why I have a hard time believing anything he says, because he's already admitted that he was an agent for the military that peddled disinformation. So why should we believe anything that he says now here in this video age, now that he's allegedly retired? He's just given up the goods. Why should we believe anything? Or is he still on the clock, feeding some of us exactly what we want to hear so we'll actually believe it?
Was this technology gifted to us, or did the ETs actually help us construct this craft?
ETs helped us to construct this craft.
Okay.
One particular extraterrestrial non-human that we found in a crash in 1959, he was the one that we held in captivity, and then he decided to help us in the development of something that we could use to travel throughout the universe.
What particular group or race was this ET from?
The Pleiadians.
It was a Pleiadian.
Yes. Well, most people within the UFO community knows a code name for a particular extraterrestrial that worked out of Area 51. And they know it by J-Rod.
J-Rod.
J-Rod was a non-human that assisted us in the creation of this project.
See, everything that he says, I kind of have to take with a grain of salt, because even though he sounds so convincing, I'm going to pound this into the ground. How do we know what he's telling us is actually true? And what does it have to do with all of this alleged declassified footage that we're getting now? Because it almost seems like the old bait and switch. You get told exactly what you want to hear when something else is going on that we're not supposed to be paying attention to. And that's kind of the way I'm thinking about all of these releases these days, these recent ones, is I want them to be real, and none of them are all that impressive. None of the videos that have been declassified and released recently are anywhere as good as the ones that got leaked 10 years ago by ATIP. Those are good quality videos. The ones that we're getting shown now are all blurry and fuzzy and dark, and you don't really see a lot except for the snowflake one. But at least maybe there's some that I haven't seen yet, but it's almost like we're all being fed this big giant disinformation campaign now, so we don't pay attention to what this administration or what this military is currently doing.
Went over the top of the mountain was open. We could see down into the mountain. I would say the opening was probably at least a mile. I said, my God, look at this. And the other agent on board the helicopter said, that mountain just opened. So we got a little lower and we could see the distinct structures down there. There were like buildings inside here, little buildings all around. So I got a couple agents, and there was a security detail of 12 to 15 of them, I believe, security police. There's a tunnel. The old uranium mine is there, and there's a tunnel that leads the old mine shaft. We went down there, we walked in. Once we got beyond the door, it was dark. As we get closer, we see a light. We see that something's illuminated in there, and we hear this humming sound. As I got close to the opening, this being appeared as if he walked around the corner, and I'm about 50 yards from the being. It was tall, over 6 foot tall. It had a very large appendage coming out of its face, and I wasn't sure if it was some kind of a breathing apparatus. It had very long arms, probably went down to its knees. Had very long fingers. It appeared to me to be reptilian looking. I never drew my weapon. The agent next to me, he did pull his weapon, but he had it down to his side. I didn't know this at the time, but he saw other beings behind, farther away, because he's at a different angle. He's over here. I backed up a couple steps. It didn't move, and I turned around and went back. And a short time later, we were told that it was going to be taken care of. And I kept asking the question, how is it going to be taken care of? He said, we got nuclear weapons at Nevada test site. We're going to use that facility as testing of a weapons system.
See, the stories that he tells are just so science fiction, so fantastic, so the wildest conspiracy theories that you hear are what he's going on all of these interviews and these documentaries and he's talking about. Other than the Mirage Men, where he really talks about what he did to Paul Benowitz, which I believe that part of his interview. But now, as time has gone on and he's sort of become this ufology celebrity now, these stories are just getting even more and more and more fantastic. So that's what makes me think that he's still feeding you the disinformation, because I've always heard my entire life about when you're in the government and you're in the military, you have to sign away a non-disclosure agreement to where things that you may learn of a sensitive nature, you will never ever talk about in public unless it ever gets declassified. So it just seems kind of strange that he's probably had to sign all of these non-disclosure agreements, specifically with the job that he allegedly had. And now all of a sudden he's just, spilling the beans to all of us and telling us all these fantastical stories are 100% true. So I don't know what to believe. And maybe that's just him doing a damn fine job at what he does. But he's not the only sort of bit of disinformation out there, because for every one of him that you have, then you have other people that really dive deep into the disinformation pool. And this next video, we're just gonna kind of take it step by step, I suppose.
I saw contingency plans called Majestic.
This is the legend, Bill Cooper. He's talking about the disinformation, the misinformation the U.S. government planned with these folks. Listen.
Okay. If you're not aware, those are 5 pretty famous names in ufology. Well, not Giorgio for the quite that much, but I suppose I understand what they're saying. I am going to put out there before we continue that the person that made this video talks over them a lot. So I'm going to kind of pick and choose when I stop and talk, but let's continue.
Carefully.
And these
But if you listen and you pay attention, you'll understand why we're living in the little season of Satan. And if you could do me a favor, like, follow, share, let's get this information out there.
Little season of Satan. Anyway.
Project Majestic.
Contingency plans were to, well, first place, a contingency is a plan that can be implemented if certain things occur. And the certain things that would have tripped this contingency plan are, number one,
basically the whole Majestic project was a psyop.
See, that's what I mean about him talking over. Hit pause, dude. Make your comment and then go back to it. Kind of like I just did. But I'm only playing it because it's kind of serving the purpose of what I want to talk about.
Truth. So they have to implement this to get them steered off the track. Or number two, we don't want to tell the public the truth about the alien presence, but there's so much alien activity occurring that the public is on the verge of finding out anyway. Let's tell them this story so that it doesn't cause consequences that we don't want. And that plan was called Majestic.
Now, Majestic's a big one within ufology. And it kind of started predominantly in the early 80s with Bill Moore, and then Stanton Friedman, you see in the corner of the screen there. They did a lot of work on the research of Majestic. And I think Stanton Friedman, out of all the UFO researchers, past and present, he is the most credible to me, kind of almost my ufology hero, my ufology idol, because he actually did research and he didn't just willy nilly believe everything. If something was BS, he would call it out on it. Now, frankly, he did get into a lot of debates with debunkers, and that was sort of one thing that he was known for, was doing debates with like William Class and all of the big debunkers of the day. So to insinuate that he was being used as disinformation, I don't necessarily buy that one. The other four that you see on the screen, yeah, I can kind of believe it, but we'll continue in a minute.
I was in a bookstore one time. I'd never seen UFO magazine. Didn't even know it existed. In fact, I didn't even know that there was a UFO culture in the world of people who study UFOs or worship UFOs or have little UFO meetings. I had no idea that was occurring. I was in a bookstore one time and I was looking at the magazine rack. I'm an avid reader and I'm always in bookstores. And this one day I saw a magazine just popped right out at me, that UFO. And I picked it up and I looked inside, and here is Majestic, all right there. And even the people who had been named to implement the plan were the ones who were actually implementing it. William Moore, Stanton Friedman. I'd never heard of Jamie Chandray, but he was named, and they had brought out a supposed genuine document called the Eisenhower Briefing Document, which in reality is a fraudulent document. It's a fake, and it was created to implement the plan Majestic, to either indoctrinate the public on what the government wants the public to perceive as happening, or to steer researchers away from the truth, or both.
Now, the one thing with Majestic is it really hasn't been verified as true. But there is a lot of, I guess you could call it circumstantial evidence about the reality of this group, whether it was actually called magic or not. There probably is truth to the idea that there was a group that was called Majestic that sort of held minion over all this UFO stuff, specifically in the 1950s and maybe a little bit into the 60s. But do we know for a fact that it was real? No, we don't have the ironclad proof. And the debunkers will come on and say that all these files that they allegedly got in the 80s has been proven as fake, which kind of sort of has.
This wasn't revealing the plan of Majestic, but it was actually implementing the plan.
Implementing the plan against the public. It was a psychological operation against the public.
So this is what you saw. Right.
So immediately my head began to spin around, and I began to think, God, I've got to tell people that they're being manipulated. This is a lie.
And maybe you're just coming on here making us believe all of this stuff, kind of like the same thing that happened to Paul Benowitz that we talked about earlier. Tell people what they want to hear. Make them believe the most outlandish things when what's actually happening is right behind. Well, anyways.
Really, if the public were using their own intellect, they would know that it was a lie. The executive order quoted for the this document was 92,000 something. I believe it was 92447, which is 92,447, and it was supposedly written by Truman. But Truman never wrote an executive order higher than 9,000. I mean, even today, there's no executive order with the number 92,000 on it. They've been consecutive since the beginning.
So it was clearly fraudulent.
So it's clearly.
So that is kind of your disinformation about Majestic. And the video went on and talked a lot about it's all a satanic ploy to lead us away from Jesus. And that's kind of why I cut it off, because it really went down the rabbit hole at that point. But what do we want to say about disinformation? Is it happening still? Are we getting all of these disinformation officers in all of our UFO docs and videos and whatnot now, telling us the things that we want to hear? So are they still doing their job, even though they claim they're retired and a private citizen now? Yeah, I think they probably are, because one thing that I don't remember which one said it, but they made it a point of stating that you give them a little grain of truth and wrap it around the most outlandish story that they won't believe. And that's how you sort of sucker them in. And I kind of think that might be what's going on now, is we're getting all these information declassified and shown to us. And even a lot of the docs that are out there now, even some of the ATIP stuff and the To the Stars stuff, I think might be a little bit of disinformation to steer us away from what the truth actually is. And in the declassified doc that was out from TMZ a couple years ago, Jeremy Corbell had mentioned that there was this thing that he knew for certain that they meaning the government, knew when the aliens were going to make themselves known to us. And he texted it to the producer, and the producer showed his phone and it said 2027. And then he followed it up with, but if they know that we know that, they'll probably change it. So is that a piece of disinformation? Yeah, I kind of think it is. And I don't think Jeremy Corbell is part of the whole disinformation campaign, but I do think some of the things that he does, because he's so passionate about it, gets used for disinformation. He gets fed stuff that he releases to us and the public, and kind of doing their dirty work without knowing he's doing their dirty work. So bottom line, what do I think's going on with all this declassified stuff? I think it's just a smokescreen to cover up from things that the military and the government doesn't want us to see what's going on, giving us a grain of things that we have thought have been stifled and hidden for decades, which we do think things have been stifled and hidden for decades. And I still think that they're being stifled and hidden because, like I said, of all the videos that they've released over the past 6 weeks, nothing has been earth-shattering that we have seen. The 2 clips that I showed you earlier, there's nothing major about it. You can't look at them and say, yep, that's an alien spacecraft. But do I think they still have stuff? Absolutely, I think they do. And at some point throughout the year, I'm going to do an episode about all the alleged UFO crashes that have happened over the past 70 years. But that's a story for another day. Maybe you have thoughts about disinformation within ufology, and maybe you actually believe all the stuff that's being declassified now. Maybe you think the government is finally showing us everything. If you do, either way, let me know in the comments wherever you watch this, and we'll pick this conversation back up when more things get declassified and all of that. I don't have a closer for this, so I'll just simply close with still waiting.